All right. Today's session will be recorded in 45 minutes. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are joining us in the world today. We know you've been to a lot of Zoom meetings, so we are especially grateful that you chose to be with us today. As the old saying goes, if you have your health, then everything else follows. And when we have healthy women involved and leading within all sectors of our companies and communities, we all win. Welcome to an authentic conversation with these incredible women. So let's start off with introductions. And so we'll start with you, Ilse, and then go to Jen and Marissa. So Ilse, take it away.
Great. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I hope you can hear me. So yeah, thanks for having me today. It's good to be with you all. And I'm Ilze Melngailis. I am a senior director for the Business Council for the UN, as well as private sector engagement at the UN Foundation. Very pleased to be here actually with a former colleague, Jen Kimfield, who will introduce herself shortly. And the UN Foundation is based in Washington, D.C. We have offices in New York. I am currently one of the many people who under the pandemic moved to a more rural, quiet area. So I'm speaking with you from Southern Vermont. I'm looking forward to being with you all today. I guess the one thing we were asked to just say a little something about today's discussion. My background now, or my work now is on all topics related to sustainable development and corporate engagement. But the first 20 years of my career, I focused on girls and women, and it is really where my passion is, and maternal health and reproductive health. So I'm very excited for today's discussion. And I really, really hope that we're at a turning point, and that a silver lining of the COVID pandemic is that we will in fact be able to make more progress and that we'll be able to bend the curve. So maybe we could have a discussion about that, because who knows? But anyway, that's my hope. So anyway, thanks. Looking forward
Oh,
to
thank you,
discussing.
Ilse. Thanks for sharing your passion with us as well. Jen, you're up next.
Sure. I'm Jennifer Kim Field. I'm the Vice President for Corporate Social Responsibility for Henry Schein and the Executive Director of the Henry Schein Cares Foundation. So I am calling in from sunny yet cool Long Island here in New York. Our global headquarters for Henry Schein is right in the middle of the island in a town called Melville. And who and what is Henry Schein? For those of you who may not be aware, we're the world's largest distributor of equipment and product for office-based practitioners, particularly dentists and doctors. And so given that we are in the midst of supply chain, given the world that we live in right now, it's been awe-inspiring to work for a company that's helping to support frontline workers to provide for those in need. But we have been around for nearly 90 years. It did start off with a man named Henry Schein and his wife, Esther, out of Queens. And so pleased to be here because, as Ilse mentioned prior to this, I was at the UN Foundation. And so am really proud to sort of marry what I did there and my career throughout in terms of partnerships, because I think it does take the private sector with all sectors to come together collectively towards reaching the SDGs in the next 10 years, but also particularly health. We are in a health crisis, and particularly for those in underserved areas, communities of color. I think now more than ever, you're seeing, given the COVID impacts, how things are sort of splitting and dividing, and things that might have been there but aren't coming to light. And so really pleased to be able to talk about what we can do around women and health and where we can go with this together. Thanks.
And last but not least, Marissa, the person who helped coordinate us all together.
Hey, everybody. It's great to be here with you. And actually, it was Andy Levy who coordinated all of this, who came up with the great idea of her talk. So I just want to say thank you for that. But hey, Marissa Fayer, I'm the CEO and founder of Her Health EQ. I'm here in New York City, and this is the only 5 minutes that they actually wanted to blow some leaves. So apologize if you hear that in the background. I guess they're putting up all the holiday lights and they need the leaves out of the way. But so HER.Health is a global social enterprise nonprofit, and we focus on women's health in developing countries. We make sure that we get the medical equipment to the women who need it, and also the doctors that need it. We focus on non-communicable diseases, such as cancers, diabetes, heart disease, and maternal health. And a lot of this, the work that we do enables the prevention, detection, and treatment of these non-communicable diseases, of which can be prevented, diagnosed, and treated oftentimes. And it's always better to catch it earlier. And so, you know, exactly what Faith said, it's been a tough year. And, you know, I know for myself and my family, grateful to have my health and our health. And we know that when women have their health, that everybody wins. And I think that's really important for us to talk about. And it's really been a hard year for women as well. Women are on the front lines. 70% of healthcare workers are women in the US and around the world. And I think that's something pretty startling that everyone probably only just realized now. A lot of us in the industry knew that, but now everybody just realized that. I also think that it's clear that, like, when women have their health, they can help all of us and help us be our best self, our most amazing self. And that applies again to the US, but also to all around the world. And so at HER.Health, that's really just what we want to do. We want to make sure that this equipment gets to the doctors that can help these women live incredible lives. And it's really about access and equity to the equipment for us.
Thanks to all of our esteemed ladies on the panel today for those great introductions. I'd like to go back to you, Marissa, because, you know, a lot of sessions start out, or I should say end with the goals, you know, end with what can, you know, call to action, what can we be doing, us folks here on the call, listening in or watching. I'd like to flip that around today and point this question to you, Marissa. What are the goals? And why are these goals so critical today? Why are they important to communities? Why is it important to all of us around the world, those of all genders?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we want most especially is, you know, our biggest goal right now is that we are impacting the lives of 1 million women by the end of 2025. Before the pandemic, it was in the beginning of it. Now, you know, we had to put a pause in it, but it's a really big deal. So just to say that again, 1 million women's lives impacted by the end of 2025, which is really not far away. It's in 4 years. And so our goal really is to make sure that women have access to equipment so that they have healthier lives, and that the doctors have this equipment to make it happen. And so, you know, a lot of people forget about non-communicable diseases, and you know, they're actually deadlier than so many of the communicable diseases, and especially combined. And so it's in this gap where you've lived long enough to survive these communicable diseases, and now you're a little bit older, or there's new things coming up, and you have a healthier life, and now non-communicable diseases are going to get you. And so in the States and in Europe, we have access to really good hospitals, really great pieces of equipment. And in the developing world, they don't have access to that yet. It's either because they don't have the capital to buy it, they don't have the infrastructure to support it. And so that's kind of where HER.Health comes in. And what we do is we work with medical device companies, and we get them to where they need to go. Oftentimes, if they're here and they're scratched and they're returned or things like that, they turn into waste. And so we're just repurposing what would have been waste into perfectly good, usable pieces of equipment. And so, again, our biggest goal is 1 million women impacted. But really what we want are medical device partners so that we can have donations of equipment. We are a nonprofit social enterprise mix. So of course we would love donations, especially of equipment, because those are very high dollar value items. We want to connect with the CSR and giving departments of corporations, all types of corporations, that we can partner with financially and strategically and tactically. So it ranges from all types of corporations. And really the other side is we are also looking to connect with impact investors so that we are able to scale what we do for the future. And so there's a lot to do. There's a lot of work ahead of us. And I think it's a great question asking the goals so that at least everybody knows kind of, from our perspective, where we're going and what we're looking for and, what we're trying to achieve in the future. And once we hit the million, we want to keep going. We're not stopping, but we want to, give ourselves a good goal to start with.
Oh, that was great, Marissa. And as a fan and supporter of the circular economy, I'm very excited about how you're taking that old equipment and making sure it has a next life and it's kept in that constant continuous loop of use, because it's not only helpful for our planet, but it's helpful for the people on the planet as well. So continuing on the theme of goals, let's take a vote here. So you'll find a little button that says reactions on your screen. So locate that right now. How many people are aware of the Sustainable Development Goals? They're sometimes called the SDGs for short. So if you've heard of these, please feel free to click your hand clapping or thumbs up button. Both count. And you only have to click it once. And you don't have to worry about clicking again to make it go away, because it'll go away on its own. So let's go ahead and take that poll with the clapping hands or the thumbs up in your reaction there. And we'll see. Oh, we've got some people here that have heard of the Sustainable Development Goals and some people that have not. So that's good, because we have some people on the call that really know about the SDGs. So that's a good thing. All right, so that's a nice mix there. So let's go to you then, Ilze. Can you take us into a deeper talk about the specific SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and maybe share where we can learn more in the chat as well. But specifically, can you talk about, out of these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which ones particularly are we focusing in on with this discussion today, and why? Why is it important for company leaders to pay attention? Why is it important for an employee in a company? Why is it important for a citizen in a community to take note? If you can share a little deeper dive and take us down from that 30,000-foot view, Ilze, that'd be great.
Okay, terrific. Hi again, everyone. And I realized I didn't share what the United Nations Foundation is. It's not I didn't mean to presume that everyone would know. So we're the only nonprofit in the world that carries the UN's name. We exist to support the UN, and we help the UN basically build a better world. So the UN, as you know, is addressing every topic in the world and attempting to address every injustice out there. And the United Nations Foundation supports the UN through communications, through supporting some of their policy goals, through linking member states with other constituencies, including companies, which is one of the things that I do. We do a lot of corporate partnerships as well. And then one of the things we did was to help support the formation of the Sustainable Development Goals. We ourselves house 22 partnerships and initiatives across the foundation. And maybe one of the biggest preoccupations since the launch of the goals has been in standing these up, because we think they're so important. So for the few people on the call who don't know what they are, as Faith said, there are 17 of them. There was much hand wringing about this being too large a number, but people have embraced these goals so much more than we expected. And so I would urge you, and after I'm done, I'll put something in the chat about the goals. But in any case, the UN in 2015 established this set of goals after 2 years of negotiations with every country in the world. Every country in the world signed on to them. These are 17 goals to deliver peace and prosperity and a better future, quite literally, for everyone. If the goals are successful, they will have all but eradicated poverty and inequality, and also really led the charge on climate change. They are utopian, as a lot of what we do, but they are so incredibly important. And as I mentioned, the extent to which companies have gotten behind them has been incredibly encouraging, as well as, of course, many governments and NGOs and citizens, because what they do is they really provide a framework. Any aspect of global development that you focus on, you're going to find them represented in the goals, and the goals become then a global framework for action amongst all actors. The other thing that's special about these goals is that they are universal. So every country in the world has has adopted them, including the United States. And so they apply just as much to, Switzerland as they do to Swaziland. And so every country in the world is accountable to delivering on the goals. So in terms of today's discussion, the goal that would be most relevant is SDG 5, but also SDG 3. So when I say SDG, I mean Sustainable Development Goal, or Global Goal. So number 5 is the girls and women, the gender equality goal. So the overarching goal is to achieve gender equality and empower all girls and women. There are overall for all the goals 169 targets that are meant to deliver on the goals that governments are reporting on. The SDG 5 has 9 goals, and they range from reducing discrimination overall to violence against girls all and women, all harmful practices, valuing unpaid care, increasing women's participation in leadership, delivering universal access to sexual and reproductive health. But equally, I want to flag SDG number 3 because I think it's particularly relevant to what we're talking about today. And SDG 3 is the health goal. So it's the overarching goal is to deliver health for everyone on the planet. That's a big goal. I just read recently that 50% of people in the world don't have access to essential health services. I don't know exactly how that was measured, but having worked in over 30 countries around the world prior to my current job, I definitely saw that in action. So, so within that goal, there is the target number 1 actually is on maternal and reproductive health, maternal health in particular, I'm sorry. And the goal, the specific target is to reduce maternal mortality globally to a level of 70 per 100,000. Another goal is again on universal access to sexual and reproductive health. So I'll just add, because having been involved, not directly, but our organization was involved in the negotiations, and you can imagine that was one of the most contested goals, and somehow it wound up being in the goals twice, which is great. And overall, then there's also a target of reducing non-communicable disease deaths by a third. By a third. And so that is also very much relevant to what we're talking about today. And then maybe just in terms of how people can get involved in them, please do take a look and read about them. They're incredibly inspiring. There is, as I said, the breadth is so all-encompassing that there is something for every individual, every company, every government in particular, but certainly for those for whom it's voluntary, like companies and individuals and NGOs. It's important to find the goals that specifically speak to what you care about, what your competencies are, and then specific targets that you can help deliver on. And I guess my parting thought would be, please think about what you can do that's transformative. So this is not at this point about mapping what you're already doing to the goals and saying, this is how I'm helping, because that's what we've all been doing and it's not sufficient. We have to bend the curve for every single goal. We're behind on the target of reaching them in 2030. And so everybody needs to do something different, something bigger, something, as we like to call, business unusual, and in order to really make a difference and to achieve the goals. Thanks, Faith.
Oh, thank you for that rundown. That was great. If you can paste that link into the chat too. And I did note that we are focusing on 3 and 5, if people can pay special attention to those two. Now, talking about companies, so you talked about Ilse, companies really making these commitments. One of those companies that's really done a tremendous amount around this and continues to really pledge to just do so much more is your company, Jen. So if you can take us into some specifics and take us deeper into that area around what companies can do and share your example.
Sure, you got it. So I'm going to respond in 2 ways, right? We're talking about 2 very big thoughts, the SDGs, which are big and broad, and there's so many of them, but they're critically important. And then we're talking about women's health, and so there's so many different contexts when it comes to that, and particularly the NCDs. So I'm going to offer 2 perspectives. One is as it relates to women's health and the SDGs and what we're doing to move the needle on that. One is internally, right? So what are we doing internally as a company? Because we are a purpose-driven company, we want to make sure that we have an eye out for the health of all of our employees, who we call Team Shine members. And so what are we doing that in this moment of COVID and having to pivot and re-strategize and rethink how we work, ensuring that we have the health of our workforce in mind. And so we have a Women's Leadership Network employee resource group. It's celebrating its 3 years, and they're a force to be reckoned with. And so I think it's really important that the dialogues that we've created through the WLN, the Women's Leadership Network, has been really critical, because it's a peer-to-peer network on how to support one another, whether it's how do you ensure that you still have a voice in this digital working environment that we're in right now? How are we looking out for one another's health? So mental health has really come up during this moment. And we know, particularly with data, as Marissa just mentioned, that women are bearing a large portion of the burden when it comes to work, household, children, and so much more. And so how are we supporting our workforce with mental health and promoting a resilient workforce during this? So we've done anything from established a COVID-19 resource center where people can go to have access to resources on how to manage their stress. We've held global town halls. We've had our employee resource group to support one another as well. And so there's been a myriad of ways, as well as managing the health and safety of our workers. And so as a supply chain company, we do have various warehouses throughout the globe. And so ensuring the safety and security, from providing PPE to having the temperature checks and things like that, has been really critical. So that's the internal side, right? So before we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves in order to take care of others. That whole idea of, if you're on the airplane, you put your oxygen mask on first before your children's, because how can you put your child's oxygen mask on if you yourself aren't there? So that's the first. The second is, what are we doing externally? So again, we've been around for quite some time. And so we advocate for health equity and system strengthening. So particularly SDG 3. And it's all about how do we forge partnerships that to promote things that matter to us in the healthcare side. So this includes wellness, prevention, oral health as primary care, particularly, and then access to good quality healthcare, whether that's medical or the oral health side. And as Marissa mentioned, NCDs, I'd be remiss to say that we know particularly communities of color have been affected by COVID, but they also have a higher prevalence of NCDs as well, and particularly underserved communities around the world in low and middle income countries. And for those of you who may not know, the mouth is a gateway to the rest of the body. And so there is a close linkage in terms of oral health and the non-communicable diseases, particularly diabetes and heart disease. And so we want to make sure that there's that clear linkage. I'm happy to also include it in the chat. There is a series that the Lancet Journal did on oral health that launched during UN Week last year. And we want to continue to elevate that growing body of evidence that shows sort of oral health with NCDs, and particularly how it is affecting women and underserved populations, because oral diseases impact 3.5 billion people around the world. And so to Marissa's point, how can we help lift that burden a little bit? And so I think that's really key. And then how do we translate that to promoting it to our stakeholders? So, we're at the centerfold of 3,500 supplier partners, to 1 million customers, to our investors, Team Shine members, and society. And so how are we promoting this to them? And there's a variety of programs that we have, from our heart health program, where we're promoting to our customer base about heart health, and particularly women's health. And so if they purchase product during a period of time, we are raising awareness of certain nonprofit partners like the American Heart Association, who are tied to that particular cause. And that's one way that we're helping to raise awareness, as well as supplier diversity. So as you can imagine, making sure that women-owned businesses and veteran-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses, that we're working to elevate that too. So those are internal and external examples, if that's helpful.
Super helpful. I love when people talk specifics, and I love to go from that 30,000 foot view all the way on down. So that's spectacular. Okay, this next question is up for grabs for any of the panelists. So just like nature's ecosystems hangs in a balance of interconnections, right? And we talk a lot about sustainability, circularity there. So does our human structure. And we've come to the awareness that there is a strong connection between health, women, and social justice. Can you please share your insights with all of our attendees today around this area? Who would like to grab that question?
Well, I'm happy to go first because I think it plays to what I just mentioned in terms of um, this year has been an unprecedented year, as we know, from COVID to racial injustice to so much. And so I think that particularly in the US, but also around the world, what we've seen is that communities of color have particularly been impacted. And so I think that we all need to rethink and reshape how we think about health equity. And I think that there are a variety of ways in which we could do that. But I think that partnerships and collaboration is really key around it, but it's something that we need to continue to talk about because I think that there are a lot of issues from the unemployment here in the US and the great need for food security to how do you bridge a digital divide. But I think we need to continue to push that the health side is critically important. We know that people are not going to see their doctors and dentists and imagine that if this is exacerbated in developed countries, what does it look like in developing countries in terms of access to healthcare? And the more that you delay any kind of wellness and preventative care, the more you're going to see that particular issue, illness exacerbated in the future. And so impressing upon people and rebuilding the trust among consumers to go to their doctors, to their dentists, that there is a trusted source and that yes, there is a lot of noise out there and there's a lot of unrest that's there, but you still need to ensure that you are getting those regular checkups and that people are getting the opportunity for prenatal care. People are still having the opportunity for access to equipment. And so how do we overcome whether it's supply chain challenges, whether it's access? It's something that we need to continue to have a dialogue because there's going to be so many challenges and it's still the next 6 to 9 months at least that we need to think through this. And so we don't want to further delay not only the reaching the SDGs in 2030, but further delay sort of health outcomes in general, for particularly for communities of color.
True.
Any others? Yes.
Yeah.
Ilze, you can chime in on this one too.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much data on the ramifications of what Jen is talking about and the gaps in care, whether it's vaccines, to, it's looking at developing countries. We're expecting a resurgence of everything from polio to malaria because of the lack of access to medical care that Jen just talked about. So that's critical. I guess, what I would want to say, and again, since we were urged to make it a little more personal, I think Jen talked about how women in particular have to put the oxygen masks on themselves first. I think I'm guessing that women can actually put their oxygen mask on themselves while putting it on their children and their families, because that's what women do. But I get the bigger idea. And, I think I just want to say a little more about what I said at the beginning. I really, really hope that just as there's a wider appreciation for global health, so looking at investment bankers who probably really didn't value global health before, and it's something they took for granted, are looking at global health now because they see the tremendous economic ramifications of something like a global pandemic. And so just for the field as a whole, I think it's our moment to strike. And hopefully people will really have taken note of, as Marissa said, that 70% of healthcare workers are women, and without them, everything falls apart and people's lives are at risk. So I just to say again, I really, really hope that we're at a turning point. And then to say something a little more edgy, one of the things that I would think we should all stop doing is talking about the ROI of investing in women's health. And we all do it. And it's on, it's on Marissa's website because that's how you have to, get people. That's how, one of the ways you get unconvinced policymakers and government leaders or others to invest in what you're talking about is the ROI. And they can take that upstairs, so to speak, and say, look, if we invest in this project, these are the, the wider economic benefits that will accrue to everybody. And I myself have written, I could hold you brochures and reports that I've written that calculating the economic and social benefits and benefits to children's health and to family health and community health and national economic health. But I think it's time to just full stop care about women's health, because it's a human right. And it's so tragic. Even the data that I just cited of the goal of 70 maternal mortalities per every 100,000 births, that's too many. Germany has 5 for every 100,000 births. That's what the goal should be everywhere. I know that's a very quixotic statement, and it's very, very, very hard to achieve. But if we don't mobilize the political will now, I don't know when we will. But I do think that it would be so nice if we could just get there also, because everyone realized how valuable it is to safeguard women's health just along with anybody's health, and that we don't have to offer more justifications. So that's what I would put out there today.
Very inspiring words, Ilse. Thank you so much. I concur 100%. I remember I used to work at a company where the CEO, who was a male, but he said, do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. So that's words to live by. And it's a big, $50 billion company. So this is, leaders can lead from the positions that they're in to say, we're going to give some dollars here to support the equipment, or we're going to help you out with the supply chain to get some of the equipment that save it from landfill and regenerate it and get it back in the system as well. Marissa, I'll let you respond to that as well if you'd like to for that last question.
Sure, I could just say ditto. Honestly.
Healthy woman, definitely, right?
I mean, they already did my job, so that's amazing, but thank you. So, yeah, like I really responded to what Ilse said, like, stop talking about the ROI. Unfortunately, we have to, and because of the amount of investors that unfortunately, and people who are at decision-making are men. And so that's another part of this equation that we have to continue to change as well. And, ensuring that women, again, going back to the SDGs, ensuring that women are in positions of decision making, but ensuring that they have their health so that they can be in those positions. And that's really important. And it's not just in the US to be making decisions or Europe to be making decisions. It's all around the world. And that's really why we do what we do, because we know that they can't be women in these positions of power, positions of decision making. And whether it's just in their family or their community or in the country itself or the region, they don't have their health. They can't do any of that. And that's very much kind of what we continue to fight for. And it seems like a very small thing to focus on, is to make sure people, and especially women and doctors have this equipment, but there's tangible ramifications to that. And almost all of the work that we do is in a developing country, in communities that often see racial injustice, which has been very apparent to us this year, in lower to middle income countries and or communities in certain countries as well. And I think focusing on that seems to be where we feel that we can make the most change, and where we can impact, humankind as at large. And it's a very grandiose thought. But everyone has their place and their focus, and each company does as well. And, it's very important for women to have their health. And I think it's most important, the other side of it is one of the reasons I founded it was because I want girls to go to school, and they can't go to school when their mothers and their grandmothers and their aunts are sick, because they're the first ones pulled out of school. And it's those girls in school, they're going to change our world. And it's just, we see the continuum, and making sure that those girls are in school so that they can be our future is the reason why we do a lot of what we do. And it just plays into everything that has been made even more apparent this year. And I'm glad, and I hope that people, exactly what Jen and Ilse said, like, people are starting to pay attention. And they were, they were in our small communities and in our communities that we talk about this, but now at large, people are becoming far more cognizant that, yeah, you have to invest in healthcare. Yes, you have to invest in women. Yes, you have to invest in women's healthcare. And it's not just a US problem. It's not just a European problem. This is a global problem, which is made horribly apparent given how detrimental things have been going in the US. And so I think it's put a spotlight. Unfortunately, we had to go through this, but it does put a spotlight, and maybe this is the catalyst for us to move forward in the future to where we're all working and where we all want to be.
Truth words, right? You're a truth teller, definitely. We have a couple minutes, just a brief question, maybe one or two questions. So if you can type those in the chat, then I will verbalize those to the panel and see if we can get a response for you before the close of our session. So please go over to your chat. It was near your reaction button there, and you click on the chat, and then you can send to everyone, or you're welcome just to send to myself or to any of the panelists here. So questions for this esteemed panel here. You got a lot of intelligence, so hit them up.
And just, I had one texted to me for somebody who had to
Perfect.
drop
That's
off.
Good. Hey,
so I'll read it. I'm not going to respond though, because I've had time to think about it. So it's what is the single most important thing we can do as a global community to work towards health equity for women right now? So like the one single thing. And I think we've touched on it, but if there's any other big one.
So Ilse or Jen?
Yeah, I'd say policy change and just amping up accountability. So working with media and others to publicize where countries are. But one of the most interesting interventions that I read about that I haven't read much more about was legal action, again, to prosecute malpractice but for women's health and maternal health. So I think that if there was a way to change accountability and spotlight in new and different ways, that could be transformative. I mean, it's not something that any one of us right here can do right now, but that's a big question. So there's a big answer.
Well, as citizens and communities, we can call all of our legislators too, as well, and let that be known. Yeah, absolutely. Public policy, a great one, and legal actions. Mrsa or Jen?
I think for me, it's continuing to advocate a public health message, right, to everyone, no matter where you are, making sure that that message is reaching the right people in the right ways. Because as I mentioned earlier, we really, in this world, there's so much distrust. So building the trust, making sure it's the right information and that it's from a trusted source to sort of get people out of their shell and to want to go and get the access to health that they may have, or information on how to go access that health is really critical moving forward.
Thanks so much, Jen. Those are all actions that we all can take, whether we be a leader in a company, an employee, or even a citizen in our community. So thank you so much. So, and if you write it down, folks on the call, write it down, you'll be 80% more likely to do it. So write down what you want to achieve today towards those SDG 3 and 5 that we're focused on. And Marissa, do you want to take us out with our 30 seconds left here with the words of wisdom? And please also paste in the chat as well for everybody so that we know the link and can learn more and put those words into action for you.
Yeah, and I was just going to say act. I had to use one word, act. So whether that's, working on an advocacy, whether it's, fighting for climate change, whether it's whatever you believe in and whatever you think is important, just stop sitting back. Like we've seen it this year. You have to stop sitting and do something. So just act. And whether it's just making a phone call or an email to connect us to somebody, or connect anybody to make a change in this world, you can act. It's something small, but it could be incredibly monumental. You act with your dollars, you act with your actions, and you act with who you are as a person. And so that would be I had to use one word, that would be mine. But yeah, and I will paste obviously herhealtheq.org. That's our company. And we're really excited about the future. And we hate that it took we were still doing amazing work, and we hate that it took a global pandemic to make us even more relevant. But unfortunately did. And we know that we will come out stronger because of this. And we know that the world will come out stronger because of this. So, and it's because we're using our actions to be able to make change in this world.
Absolutely, Marissa, Jen, Ilse, thank you so much. And thank you for all of us taking our time out today to focus in on women's health. Let's act and let's build back better. Thank you so much. I'm Faith Legendre, and it's been my pleasure to be your host today.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Well.
So much.
Bye.